This is a sound test for YouTube.
Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 2:03. I call to order the meeting of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1 Advisory Board for Tuesday, June 17th. A copy of the agenda for this meeting may be found on the county website under the tab for the legislature. Please silence your phones and electronic devices, and at this time I ask you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kelly, can you do the roll call?
Yes. Amo?
Here.
Benelli? Feeny?
Here.
Ellers?
Here.
Hotel? Here. Two.
Here.
Representative.
All right, before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that some of the folks that are here today, we took part in a tour down at the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant. And I'd like to thank my fellow legislators that were able to attend, Michael Amo, Glenn Ellers, Kathy Stenenga, and Joe Menuda, along with myself. We also had our legislative counsel, Betsy Abraham, and that was an extra treat, I'm sure, for Betsy, right, you know, and then we had mayors and supervisors. We had Mayor Mitchell here, and also council trustee.
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy, keep doing that. Deputy Mayor Carol Schneider. I also want to thank Mary Beth and Brock. They coordinated a little bit of a speech when we had during lunch. Steve Tobin, the head operator over there, put out a very, very nice spread for all of us before we went. Also, a special thank you to Bob Gray for getting all of that set up and getting Steve on board with us. He also brought Anthony Griffith. I don't know if Anthony's going to join us today. No. Anthony, it was nice to have Anthony there. Also, Michael Zord and Logan. What's Logan's last name? Rainey. From EF&S, and they work on the sewer. So I feel it was very, very informative. Steve gave a nice tutorial where he really went step by step with the process. Mary Beth had an aerial view, so we were able to ask questions and say, where's this on the map? For the first time in 7 years, I was very impressed to go down and see. I always wondered where the effluent actually came out that would get into the Ramapo River. And that was very interesting, but also very buggy, a lot of mosquitoes. But we made it. We're all back here in time for our meeting. And with that, I'll go on to item number 1. 1A is the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant tour update. Mary Beth, Bob, Joe, do you guys want to come on down? Eric? And I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to add. Joe Mahoney, also want to thank our attorneys, Joe Mahoney, who was also down there. So I think that was the first time we had 2 attorneys at the sewer plant at the same time.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
And there were no fights. I didn't see Joe in the picture.
Really? I was off the left.
What picture?
He was directing. Bless you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to add anything, or?
I just really want to, again, I want to really compliment, so Bob kind of was the driver of doing this, and he worked with Steve. And I think for those of us who were present, you could really see how much pride Steve, and also there were a lot of, you may or may not have noticed, there's a lot of people who work at the plant. And how courteous and respectful. The plant is clean. I think a lot of people think of a sewer plant and they think like it's like a landfill in some respects. The plant is clean, the lawn is mowed, the facilities are clean and well maintained. I will say I've been doing this for a really long time. I've never had lobster in a wastewater treatment plant before, so I have to compliment Steve on his menu. But I hope it was informative to the legislators and the mayors and supervisors and deputy mayors and the attorneys who were present. I think it gives you a good sense of the vastness of the plant, the type of facilities that are present on site and the challenges that go along with doing construction on a site that's actively being utilized and the constraints on that particular site. We also went to, it's when we were down at the location where the outfall comes out by the dam, we also were in the vicinity of where we're hoping to get that secondary entrance. So I think that was hopefully informative to people off the state road. So I just want to thank everyone for, I go on a lot of wastewater treatment plant tours. I want to thank those who came and participated, and here's Anthony, came and participated, and I hope it was informative. It was, for that was the purpose, was to inform folks, and I hope people took away a lot.
Thanks, Mary Beth. One other thing I wanted to add was that between the public hearing and we've been doing a lot of outreach regarding the expansion and the longevity. And we were down in Harriman with the mayor and deputy mayor a month or so ago, maybe 2 months now, time flies. And then we did Mary Beth did a presentation there. And so we've been taking the show on the road. Last night at the Monroe Town Board meeting, Mary Beth brought her updates and laid it all out with the funding and about the grant applications that are in and what we're looking at in the next steps. And I think that's very important to continue to get this information out and make the public aware of what we're doing. And I just, if it adds to the transparency that this committee has always tried to strive to reach. So thank you, everybody, again. And that's it. And any other comments about tour last night or anything? No? Okay, we'll go on to item 1B, the design phase update for the Harriman wastewater treatment plant.
Big one pass. And I hope there should be enough for everyone. So this is our standard format for these updates. We've sort of fallen into this formatting. The front page is sort of the technical review update and the back page is the financing. We are again in a cycle where our technical meeting for the month of June is actually tomorrow. So I'm reporting on the technical meeting that happened in May, which happened, I believe, the day after our May meeting. The design workshop was held on May 21st, down at the sewer plant. We reviewed a progress plan set, kind of did a page-through-page walkthrough. Most of the discussion of the meeting was regarding sludge handling and disposal options, regarding how we're going to manage the residuals. Those who are on site today know that when we separate the water from its organic components, we end up with this organic material left over called sludge. We have to manage that on site somehow prior to it leaving the site. So that's a pretty substantial discussion, and that's going to be an ongoing discussion that we're going to be having about that. And then the team met with DOT on May 14th and described what we were looking for. That meeting was really valuable because I think DOT wasn't clear with respect to exactly what kind of access and what kind of land area we were looking at. They have now taken the documentation that we provided them back and they're reviewing it. So we're gonna follow up with them. We would hope to hear from them sometime in the near future.
I'm sorry, that's for the access off 17?
Access off 17, correct.
And additional, right?
And yes, and some additional, yes.
Acquire the use of, there's excess right away that
Yeah.
DOT owns.
Yes.
We'd like to use that either as an easement or construction or preferably take title to.
Acquire.
Our sub-consultants, the survey, I think we talked about this some time ago, is complete. Copies are at the county. We have paper copies, we have digital copies. That's what's being used for the design. And what's nice about that is that's a full site survey that the county can use as part of the record and documentation for the site. The asbestos and lead survey, since the last time we met, that has been completed by Ambient Environmental. The one remaining component is they need to do the survey of roof. And remember that we're doing asbestos and lead surveys in the structures where we'll either be removing the structure or we'll be modifying the structure, where we suspect that those materials may be present. And then the last component of their work would be to give us a report that we can use to document this as we go through permitting and construction. It'll be part of the bid plans for the contractors, so that they have full awareness of what's on site. And then kind of new with respect to sub-consultants, you remember we talked about that we had put out an RFP for geotechnical consultants. We received 3 substantially responsive proposals. We reviewed them all. Labella Associates, or Labella, I'm not sure what the back end of that is, but Labella was the lowest cost. They also seem to have the best understanding and the best schedule with respect to the geotechnical work. So we just executed an agreement with them. And our next step with them will be to get organized with respect to the initiation of their work. And recall that there's really called 2 big pieces of their work. One piece is to actually go advance the testing on the site so that we understand what geologic conditions are, so we can include that in our bid documents, so that the contractors will have that information, but they will also be aiding in design for shoring and dewatering and other aspects of the structural construction on the site, because we are building some extremely large pits. So that's sub-consultants in a nutshell. We have a little bit of movement with respect to our 9 MGD Speedies application that we submitted back on March 21st. Folks may remember in December, we had a meeting, a virtual meeting with DEC, where we were asking them how we could get initial preliminary effluent limits. DEC suggested we submit what they're calling sort of a limited Speedies permit application, which we did on March 21st. We are continuing to develop the information that would be in a full submission. But in the meantime, on May 20th, they sent us notice of incomplete application 1, which unfortunately for us did not include a technical review, but did include notes regarding things like wetlands, seeker, environmental justice, and a couple of other permitting related things. Those were all things that we already had awareness of, and we're already, the wetlands permitting, for instance, we had already done the jurisdictional determination and submitted that. So we're really waiting for DEC's technical review of this submission. On May 21st and again on June 16th, which was yesterday, we requested a timeframe for that technical review to obtain those interim permit limits. We haven't heard back from DEC regarding that yet.
Question, wetlands.
Yeah.
There was a new regulation in the state that took effect January 1st. Is that going to impact things? I mean, when did we do the original wetland delineation? Was it prior to that?
We did.
I mean, I've seen the maps and they're horrendous.
We did our delineation last fall when it was still when we were still within the window. DEC did respond to us and said that they would be working on this, but the wetlands are there. This really has to do with our outfall. We're designing and installing a new outfall. And if you look back, there's a dam structure there. There's cattails, there's a wetland all around that. So we know we're going to be temporarily impacting that for construction purposes. This certainly isn't gonna, this is kind of just part of the project. There's no roadblock here, there's no issues. It's just we're going through their process. So.
But the mapping seems to be much more extensive than it was. Is it now encroaching on any of the construction?
Yeah. We're good. Good. So that it's literally, the wetland area is literally around the outfall.
Thank you. That's a good question.
So we also have a little bit more movement on our notice of incomplete application number 3 for our variance for the 6 MGD species that we received on April 21st. We had an internal staff meeting back at the beginning of May. A couple of communications back and forth with DEC regarding setting up a meeting with them to go over that NOIA 3. And I believe we are nailing down a date, the first week of July, I think is where we're at with that. So we have a little bit more coordination to go, but our purpose with having that communication with them is to fully understand, make sure everyone's on the same page with respect to the notice of incomplete application and the information that DEC is looking for. So that is advancing. And then, oh, by the way, I put italics, I put stuff that's kind of not changed, just to make it a little easier for us to see. Our 6 MGD's fees renewal, that we submitted back, all the way back in 2023. We submitted information, in March that, in response to an RFI, request for information from DEC back from December, and we have not heard anything further from them in that respect. But we would expect to, when we're talking to them at this technical meeting on the NOI A3, since it's the same permit, we will be engaging them about that permit renewal as well, talking about that timeline. So that's our technical update. Does anybody have questions? We're on track. We're on scheduled track. Things are advancing. Okay, now for all the fun games. Funding. So, sound like a broken record. We've been talking for a while about these 4 potential funding sources. We do have quite a bit of new information this month with respect to these. The top one is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. This is a program through New York State. It gets seed money from the federal government. May 30th, we submitted what we consider an in-progress financing application. We had a complete application, save one piece of information that's required for that application. And then I kind of want to skip down to the very bottom one, number 4, which is the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. I'll talk about why I'm talking about these together here in a second. That was just announced. It opens on June 20th, the applications, and it's due on September 12th. These 2 things are tied together because that same action is required for both of them. So while we had a deadline of May 30th for CWSRF, the WIA application deadline of September 12th essentially gives us a couple of months extension in that timeline. So we are now driving towards that September 12th deadline with respect to a number of actions that need to be taken. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but if we go back up to number 1, we had a timeline up here, a lot of which had been accomplished. So I just did that timeline because there was no point in repeating it. And I've given you all a new timeline. And we can kind of walk through this because I like the idea that you guys have visibility into what's happening because it's a bit aggressive. It's a lot of things that we do between now and September. So you may remember we've been talking about the fact that this project needs review and approval from the Office of the State Comptroller through what we call a Part 85 application. We have prepared a draft of that application. It is in Joe's office for review. He is nearing completion of his review, and so that application should be submitted this week.
Right. I need to complete an opinion of the municipal council, which requires me to essentially review everything that's been done from the beginning of the project until now, to attest that it's been done correctly and everything that needs to get done has to be done. So I expect to be completed tomorrow.
That Part 85 application, just so anybody, in case anybody was wondering, it literally is an alphabet list from A to Z or something like that. It's literally 26 or 27 pieces of documentation, responses to comments and questions that we have to put together to document our process, which actually kind of takes us to our next action. So, and again, a little jumping around, sorry, a lot of these things are tied together. Another new hot off the process for us is the Water Quality Improvement Program, which is item number 3 on here. Since our last meeting, the due date for that has been announced. It is July 31st. So we have initiated the process of that grant application with the county's director of grants, is coordinating with one of our grant people. The application requirements that we have an engineering report, as you know, we have several, so we're in good shape there. That one's wending its way through the process, but we will need, the legislature needs to acknowledge that this application is going to be submitted. So that will be part of the request, I believe the legislative request of physical services for later this month to submit that water quality improvement program grant application. Another piece of this, as Joe was just mentioning, when we went through this process earlier this year with respect to, you mentioned we conducted a hearing, Chairman, and then we had some legislative findings after that. One of the things that occurred was that the county used what I would call the county standard language for establishing a hearing, which I'm gonna just very pejoratively say 90% of the cases is perfectly fine. But in this case, because of the nature of the application that we are working on, that hearing notice has to contain certain specific information. Because we used a standard form that the county uses, we did not have that specific information in the hearing notice. So to make sure, to Joe's point, that we correct our record and that we have our record, everything is 100% as it needs to be, we are going to be redoing that process by conducting another hearing and doing another finding on this proceeding. And we unfortunately have a pretty tight time frame to get this done, because I know I'm jumping around a little bit. A lot of this ties back to that September 12th deadline. Need to get that done before then. So walking through that schedule, legislative request for that hearing and for submitting the WQIP application would go before fiscal services on June 23rd. I believe I have that date correct. And then at the July 1st legislature meeting, there was be a resolution calling that hearing and to allow for that WQIP application to be submitted. And you'll see I put on here, resolution calling hearing to be conducted before July 28th. Reason is because fiscal services in July is July 28th. And we will need actions of the legislature to occur after that hearing has been conducted, and they will need to go through statutory committee to be on a legislative agenda. So.
Just one quick question on that. And how long do you have to give for the public notice? So is it 28 days or?
No,
30 days.
no sooner than 10, no later than 20.
Okay, so we're in good time.
So we should be good. And that's a good question to ask, because all of these hearings have different timeframes. Secret hearings have 14 days. There's other kinds that have no sooner than 60, no later than 90. Lawyers, I love you all. Yes. So we need to conduct that hearing. We need to find a date prior to July 28th to conduct that hearing. It will be.
Sorry, just one
Yes.
more quick question
Yep.
regarding the public hearing. So since we've already done one, does the comments from the first get included in the second hearing as well, or is it all new set of?
Yeah, it's all part of the record.
All part of it.
So the comments from the prior hearing, and you may remember that we took those comments and we did provide a response to those comments. That is all part of this record. So when we do this new hearing, we will obtain new comments, even if they're substantively the same, there'll be new comments and they will also become part of the record.
Thanks.
So what I was about to say, you anticipated, is that this will be a substantially the same hearing that we conducted previously. It would be a similar presentation because nothing really has changed there other than we now have some dates to fill in. And then after we've conducted that hearing prior to fiscal services, then fiscal services would have a legislative request for that, finding that the project's in the public's interest. That would be on the agenda for fiscal services on July 28th, which would then put that on the agenda for the legislature at the August 7th meeting. I put WQIP, but that would already be done. So that would be that resolution of public interest. And then we are going to be working very hard with the Office of State Comptroller to obtain their approval of our 85 application in time to make all of these things work. And then fiscal services of August 25th would include a legislative request for that Water Infrastructure Improvement Act application. That's the one that's due September 12th. I know, this is complicated, I apologize. And then the last piece of this is, and this is something I want to spend a little bit of time talking about, is that for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and for a number of these grant programs, one of the things that's required by the grant agencies is that we demonstrate that there is a fiscal commitment to the project. So how do we do that? How do we demonstrate that there's a fiscal commitment on behalf of the legislative body to the project? We've done some smaller projects in communities where they've actually had, funding within their, because the projects are small enough, they've actually had funding within the town's budget or the community's budget to act as that fiscal commitment. In the case of a project of this scale, and this is really typical of most projects of this scale, the fiscal commitment shows up in the form of a bond resolution. So bond resolution is, I know you all have seen them before, it's a series of about 20 sheets of paper put together by a specific type of attorney who's a bond counsel, who is preparing this documentation in conformance with the law. And what it is saying is that the legislature is authorized to issue bonds up to a certain amount of money for a specific public purpose. The key to this is we're saying we're authorized to do this up to a certain amount of money, but there is no obligation to do this. There is no requirement, and there is no requirement about the amount of money. So in our case, we have a very expensive project. We have a $185 million project. But as you know, we've listed a number of grants up to somewhere in the range of $60 million that could reduce the amount of money that we would need to borrow. There could be other grants on the horizon. Right now, these are the ones that are available to us, but there could be other grants on the horizon that would reduce that. So at the end of the day, the actual borrowing does not take place for some period of time for a number of reasons. One is that programmatically, it takes usually 12 to 18 months to work your way through the financing process. So it's not happening for some time. But also we have the effect of these grants that would serve to reduce that total amount of borrowing. But having that fiscal commitment on behalf of the legislative body is a gatekeeping mechanism that's built into these funding programs that there is really truly no way to avoid. So so that is where we are at with this. So the bond resolution that would be adopted would state the maximum project cost. Many times bond counsel will often state also whatever efforts are being conducted by the legislative body to secure grants and low cost financing. There's no guarantees, but putting that in a bond resolution is an acknowledgement of those efforts. And recall that we have been transparent about this when we describe the cost impact of this project on the typical user, which in our case is a single family home in the sewer district. We have been stating that that cost is around $1,000 a year. And that cost is assuming that the entire amount of the project cost is borrowed. And we've assumed an interest rate and a term that's reasonable. So anything that we do, again, to reduce that cost by securing grants, securing low cost borrowing, will reduce the cost to users. And again, I think we've shown in our math that that reduction could be around total cost of about $850 a year a user. So that's our range. We're hoping to get it lower, but our most significant cost we're looking at is about $1,000 a year a user, and our low cost is around $850 a year a user. But adopting a bond resolution is an important part of these grants and financing programs. And again, when we were earlier talking about the schedule, we did not have that target date of September 12th. We did not know when that date would be. That date has since been announced. And so that is why we have this pretty aggressive schedule here, and also why these things are all tied together. That makes sense. And I realize this is very complicated, so if people have questions, I understand.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
There are legislative requests for the public hearing to be signed hopefully by midday today. The agenda.
And that also includes that WQIP, right? Or that would be a separate one, but we need that WQIP.
There was two of them. Yep. Two legislative requests went out today, certainly.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else?
That's not enough. Wow, demanding. No, that's, as far as, from my perspective, that's where we're at.
All right.
Peter,
Yes, legislative
There's also a legislative request for a change in the law.
Yes, there is.
Those are,
Is that something that would be appropriate to discuss with the committee here at this point?
Mary Beth, those are the two I'm referring to. You know, in public hearing.
WQIP application, your fee law one, right, and which was three.
Did we
And the
already
hearing,
have WQ?
Hearing, WQIP and
the fee.
the fee. Right, am I right?
I'm not sure if there's a WQ.
No, there is,
today.
there's a legislative request to to schedule a public hearing. That's the requirement you had mentioned, right?
Right.
There's also a legislative request to modify the benefit assessment methodology. And that's the only two I'm aware of.
Okay. So there was another one.
I think it's in the pipeline.
And they have
Maybe we
come-
already have that one done.
I
I'll
think it may
double
have
check
come
on it.
from planning. From Jody. Over in planning
Yeah, the
for
WQA.
WQIP. And yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here. This has been, it's been complicated, and I appreciate everybody's patience
Yeah.
with.
My apologies, that would be a resolution or legislative request to authorize the application.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure it stems
I
there.
think I saw language.
I just went over that with the ones that jumped out with the law and public hearing.
So what are the exact dates now that we have to have these by?
And for, I'm sorry.
For, to get the request for the hearing?
So that is the schedule that I think I gave you, right?
Yes,
So,
that's top here.
so so
July
physical,
28th.
physical services, right? So the biggest thing is picking the date for the hearing. In order to roll through this whole thing,
We want to
This
try to
order.
pick that today.
we need to pick that date for sometime in July before July 28th. And I don't, well, is that physical
The
services?
physical services, I think. will
Is
be-
gonna-
It's July 28th.
Yes, but will physical
28th
services
is
select the
Monday.
date of that hearing? Is
Yeah.
that how that will work?
I would think so. It's gonna go,
It's gonna go
the
through.
physical services committee, the request that you set. a
We
public
will
hearing date.
set a
Doesn't it
public
have to
hearing.
go to June, physical service?
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's what I
That's why
thought.
it's
yeah, it's gonna get it into the agenda
That's what I'm
tomorrow
Yeah.
for
Oh,
Monday's meetings,
Yeah,
and that's circulating right now.
and then we can get the notice.
For signature.
We have time for the notices.
Yes.
Correct.
The session is July 1st.
Probably gonna depend on your schedule, Mary Beth, because you have to be here to present, right?
Probably so. Do we want to talk about that now? Chairman
Pick a date.
Cheney? Since we're all together? Or
Sure.
That would be for the date of the public.
of the
Yeah.
actual hearing?
So
The last one we did was the same day as physical services. We just went,
right,
I think we did. We just rolled through.
right.
might need a bit more time.
Be the
And
20th.
did we do it right after physical or before?
People were,
Right before.
Right before. Oh,
Yeah, we ran a little bit
we
late.
ran about 15, 20
I
minutes.
think we had technical issues or something.
We did.
Yeah.
We could get the. But we're gonna fix that this time.
I recall the public comments were probably lasted about 5 to 10 minutes or so. There wasn't,
Yeah, the
So we're
presentation
trying
was
to
about
figure out
half an
the
hour.
timeline. Yeah.
Mary Beth, you have to, we have to conduct the hearing before July 28th or on the 28th,
Correct. As long as the legislative request can be
ready for
in
August.
the waiting, right?
August.
Well, the legislative request is July for
July,
August.
July.
Yeah, for August, correct.
The session wouldn't be till August.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
if we did it for rules on the 23rd, then, because that would give us enough time to, if the session is July 1st, there are certain days that we have to get things to the newspaper for publication. I'm not sure if it's Monday or Wednesday or something like that, but that leaves the week of the 7th to get that to the newspaper and published. That'll be the 10-day time frame will be sufficient from there if we get to the 23rd. is the 23rd too late if we do it before rules on that date? Because rules is scheduled for 3:30, no, I'm sorry. We have public safety at 3:30 and then rules at 4. So if we did it before public safety on the 23rd.
And what would be the first publication?
I don't know the newspaper's schedule offhand. But
Because
it would be the
that's
week of the
important
7th.
date. It would have to, if it's
Yeah,
on
it
the
would-
23rd, the first publication would
Correct.
need to be the 13th.
Yeah, so it would have to be done the week of the 7th, the publication. Which it seems we should be able to get it done by that point. And that'll leave, at least you're within the 10 to 20 day time window if we did it on the 23rd.
Well, we could double check it and schedule our physical services if that's,
But isn't there a legislative request for physical services?
yes.
Said that they.
Correct, just,
Oh, no,
Right.
yeah, no, I'm talking about for the July 28th, because you want this done in advance
In
of
advance.
physical services on the
Correct.
28th, which is why the 23rd would likely be
right. So
Yeah.
physical services this coming Monday
this month, yes,
is
yeah,
when you'll vote to set that
That
date.
date.
right. And generally, when we do that resolution, it already has the date in there
Right,
for
right.
everyone. to-
Right, so
yeah.
we can at least
The
put that in
tentative,
right now
yes.
tentatively, put that
Mhm.
date in. And in the meantime, we can
It works.
kind of confirm.
Do it on the 23rd.
make sure.
Mhm.
Thank you.
How much time do you think you would require for a presentation on that? Because we do have public safety that starts at 3:30.
So the last time I think it was about 20 minutes, but we ended up taking half an hour because we had 10 minutes of technical problems.
It was 20 minutes of presentation, about 10 minutes of comments. But it took us at least 45 minutes because of the.
Because the, yeah, right.
Should we say
Right,
technically
2:30.
2:30?
2:30.
I think it would be worth mentioning during the public hearing that any comments that were prior are still on the record from the prior public hearing. So
Yes.
nobody from the public feels the need to repeat what they had said, those comments weren't being lost.
That's a really good point.
So we do 2:30 on the 23rd?
July 23rd, yes.
And that's before
Public
public
safety.
safety. Good. All right, so we have it all set. Does anybody have any,
Well-
oh, Barry? Right.
My original question, could you go into a little bit of detail
Of
for
course.
us about the
When-
change in the law?
Yeah, when the sewer district was established back in the procedure was 1769, it was established in 1970. And in those documentation, you'll find that it's a benefit assessment and the county law 271. And basically, that means that the county is locked into doing a benefit assessment in terms of, for lack of a better term, for obtaining funds for, in our case, for operation, for capital improvement. Sewer rents is utilized for O&M, is that correct? Here, the benefit assessment was previously done on, or is performed, the valuation of the property, based on the value of the property. This is moving towards a unit assessment, such as a single-family home, for example, would be 1 unit. And a two-family home would be 2, commercial would be by acre or by size, I forget, I forget off the top of my head. And it would be determined each year a cost per unit. And that, of course, would, you'd look at what do we need, how many units do we have, and you do the math. So that's the proposed change.
So then, and that's just for the operations, or is that for the whole thing?
The unit assessment, the modification is for the debt scale.
It'll be both.
Unit is
The unit
current,
assessment will be used for the operation and maintenance.
And
This
as
is your
it is
annual
now.
budget.
So the land tax or whatever was used in the past is
Will be
gonna
gone.
be no more.
yes.
Thank you.
It's a bit more, we find when we do this analysis, and I know we spent a lot of time working on this, it's more equitable to do it this way. Your ability to pay is not necessarily tied to what your house is valued at. If you bought your house in 1960 and you kind of did nothing to it, just as a function of revals over time, you may have your same ability to pay from 1960, but your house may be worth a ton now. because of our real estate market. So we find that doing benefit assessments in this way, and the county already has an established benefit assessment for the operation and maintenance in terms of points, and there's a schedule that you can look at that shows you that like a single family home and a two family home. We just find when we do a sensitivity analysis and we look across districts like this one, where most of the users are residential users, we don't have a lot of commercial or industrial users, so this is a much more equitable way to distribute the costs.
But the counter to that is that properties that aren't improved get off scot-free and then receive the benefit
Well,
down
they
the road
actually-
because.
You're talking about vacant properties.
Yes,
For O and M, it's not, it would be legal to,
right,
Charge.
understand.
for debt service, there is, in the schedule, there is a unit assessment for vacant properties.
Okay.
So they are paying
Not
because they are.
less than a
improved.
single.
No, yeah, no, I understand.
The
Yeah.
idea, part of the idea would be, instead of saying 1 unit per single family home, is to maybe give it a numerical up to 10. And then you can work from 0 to 10 on the property, a vacant piece of property based on the size of it and value, whether it's commercial or not.
Yeah.
You would assign it a unit or
Because to
Okay, so
your
you,
point,
so
they are
you're covering,
improved.
yeah,
Yeah, so
they're benefiting
Yeah.
from improvements that are made,
That's correct.
whether they are a user or not.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that this gives us, to Anthony's point, some more flexibility to really make this more equitable. Which is, I think, is really important.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yes, legislative council.
Mary Beth, just for edification, so on our end, we can make sure we're fully prepared for this. The hearing date that we just selected for July 23rd at 2:30, that's for the increase in improvements. Is there a WQIP component for this? If there isn't, okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Okay,
I'll check with Joey.
Yeah, yeah.
To
It's
see
just-
if it's coming from her.
Yeah, we simply, when we submit those state grants, we're in a computer program, bottom line. It's Eric, whose name goes in this, it says, I affirm the legislative body has approved this application. That it's happening, right? So we need there to be acknowledgement by the legislature that we're applying for these grants.
okay, so that's a separate resolution authorizing the application. Okay.
But thank you for asking.
Of course.
And again, I apologize for the onslaught. Actions and information.
Like to move it. All right. Kelly, just for the record, I was remiss not to recognize Mayor Wayne Mitchell and Deputy Mayor Carol Schneider. Also, Mayor Neil Dwyer has joined us, and we also have Administrator Gedalia Zegadin, representing Palm Tree KJ.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Last one question.
Okay,
The public hearing that you're setting up, I know that for bond resolution, you need a public hearing as well. And
We do not.
you do not, counties don't need the public hearings. So this public hearing will cover the bond resolution as well. Okay.
Contact two documents.
It's only like permissive referendum, mandatory referendum,
Yeah, this one would end up being permissive.
permissive, so only if you get the certain. Okay.
Thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
all right, once again, thank you, everybody that attended the tour today. Thank you for everybody that's attending the meeting, and with that, everybody have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.